Our sleepy story tonight is a folk tale from Bengal. But before we begin our fairy story, the origin of Rubies, it's time to get comfortable. Allow your body to relax and be aware of each part. Feel your limbs, your muscles, and every inch of yourself become heavy as you take in your breath slowly and deeply through your nose. Hold them for a moment, and then release them fully and slowly through your mouth. With this action, you will release any tensions, and you will feel your shoulders, your neck, your arms, your legs, and every part of you relax. Let your mind drift as we begin our story. The Prince. There was once a queen who had 4 sons. The favourite son of the queen was her youngest, and she made sure he had the best food, the best clothes, and the most affection at the expense of her other sons, making no secret of her deep love for him. As her other 3 sons grew up, they saw all of the love and attention their mother heaped upon their younger brother, and they grew increasingly jealous and resentful. They persuaded him and their mother to move into a separate house, and then they plotted against him. With all the attention and affection heaped upon him by his mother, the youngest son grew up very selfish and willful. He always demanded to have his own way and always got it. The boat. One day his mother took him down to the river to bathe. The young man was intrigued to see that a boat had been tied up along the bank, and while his mother bathed, he went to investigate it. There was no captain or crew on the boat, so the prince went aboard to have a look around and shouted to his mother to come and join him. His mother told him to get off the boat, as it did not belong to him, but the prince replied, "No, I will not. I am going on a voyage, and if you want to come with me, you must hurry up and get on board, for I'm leaving." Hearing this, his mother again told him to get off the boat immediately, but her son ignored her and began to untie the ropes that held it to the bank. As much as she didn't want him to sail away in this boat, she didn't want to be left behind without him either. So the queen ran up the bank and boarded the boat as it began to float off down the river. And there it was taken swiftly by the current. Neither the prince nor his mother knew anything about boats, and had never sailed on their own before. So they had to watch as the current took them rapidly down the river to the sea, where it continued to float out of control at the whim of Providence. On and on the boat floated, with its 2 passengers helpless to control it, as it took them out into the open sea, wide and swaying. The whirlpool. After a moment, the boat came to a giant whirlpool, and looking down into it, the young prince saw hundreds of huge rubies whirling around in the maelstrom of the pool. Deep wine red and glinting with rays of crimson and firebrick, the jewels were so beautiful and so plentiful, the prince and his mother gazed after them in awe and wonder. Reaching down, the prince caught many of these red, round rubies in his arms and brought them up on board the boat. His mother said, "You should not take those red balls, because they may be the property of someone who has had the misfortune to be shipwrecked, and they may think we're stealing them." At first, the prince refused to throw them back, But after his mother continued to insist, he eventually did let the rubies fall back down into their watery home. But he kept one back which he quietly hid in his clothes. Marbles. The boat then began to drift ashore and came to rest in a great port where they disembarked. The port was a thriving, bustling city and the capital of a rich and powerful king who had a beautiful palace. The prince was delighted by the new city they had found, and the prince's mother found lodgings that looked out over the palace lawns. It was serene and beautiful, and the prince felt he could stay there forever. They settled themselves into their daily life in this new place, and they had a calm sense of belonging. Like all boys, the young prince loved to play games, and when the king's children came out to play, he would go down and join them. The royal children liked to play marbles, and although he had none, he would play with the round red ruby that he had got from the whirlpool. Using this, every time he hit another marble, that marble would shatter into shards. The ruby was so strong and so heavy. The king's daughter. The king's daughter had watched this game for many days now, and she had been intrigued by this new boy in their city and this red marble that always beat all the others. She greatly admired the brilliant red marble this strange, unknown boy played with, and she wanted it for her own. The king's daughter always got what she wanted, and when she saw something she liked, she was used to demanding it, and she always got it. She ran to her father and told him all about the beautiful red orb the strange boy was playing with. She told him she wanted it for her own, and if she did not get it, she would simply complain and continue until she did. This red marble meant everything to her, she said, and she could only be happy once she owned it. The king loved his daughter greatly and indulged her every whim, and so he sent his servants to seek out the strange lad with the beautiful red stone. His servants went out, found the prince, and took him to see the king. He asked to see the red stone, and when the prince showed him this unusual item, he was astounded at its size and rich red beauty, for he had never seen its like before. The king was so impressed, he did not believe another of its like existed anywhere else in the world, and asked the prince where he had got it from. The prince told him he had found it in the sea, and when the king offered to pay him 1,000 rupees for it, the boy, not knowing the true value of rubies, eagerly accepted and ran quickly back to his mother with the money. At first his mother was terrified he had stolen the money, but he continued to reassure her that he had got the money by selling the red stone to the king, and at last she believed him. The pet parrot. Back in the palace, the king had given the red stone to his daughter, who had put it in her hair. She tripped lightly to her pet parrot, who she doted on, and said, "Tell me, beloved parrot, how beautiful do I look?" The parrot looked at her, then cocked his green feathered head and retorted, "Beautiful? You look like a poor serving girl. What princess would ever wear a single ruby in their hair? It would be more befitting of your royal station if you had at least 2 in your hair." Hearing her pet parrot's less than positive answer, she was flushed with shame and ran to her bedroom, taking to her bed, refusing to eat or drink. The princess was known to be dramatic in this way, especially when things didn't go just as she wanted. She had wanted to be the ultimate beauty, with a red ruby in her hair, and now her pet parrot had told her she had fallen short. She threw herself on her bed in a strop. When her father heard she was not eating and drinking and refusing to get out of bed, he went to see her to ask why she was so sorrowful. The princess told him what her parrot had said and told him, "I'm very sorry, father, but if you do not find one other ruby to match the one I have, I will stay in my bed forever and ever." The king was frightened that she meant it and was very worried because he did not know where he could get another ruby to match the one he had bought for her. Therefore he sent his servants to bring before him the boy who had sold him the ruby. When his servants brought the prince before him, the king asked him where he could get another ruby like the one he had sold to him. The prince told him he did not have another ruby in his possession, but he knew where he could find one, saying, "I found that ruby in the sea, and I know where to go to find many more. They're all swirling around in a whirlpool far over the sea, but I can go and get some more for you if you like." The young prince clearly had no idea of their value, and the king was astounded at his reply, because he knew their worth. He promised to pay the boy handsomely if he would bring to him a ruby to match the one his daughter now had. The young prince ran home to his mother and told her he was going back to sea to bring back another ruby for the king. His mother was not at all happy with the idea, being quite anxious for his safety. She begged him not to go, for the sea is an unpredictable being, but he would have none of it. His mind was set, and he was intent to go to sea and bring back a ruby for the king, and he would not change his mind. Without listening to his mother's entreaties, he ran to the boat, untied the ropes, and set sail for the whirlpool without her. The palace of Shiva. When he arrived at the whirlpool, he looked into it and saw the rubies swirling around in the maelstrom, just as before. Then he looked to find the source of where the stream of rubies were coming from. Once he had located this, he went into the center of the whirlpool, where he could see through the funnel of water right down to the ocean floor. Then he dived into the deep blue, leaving the boat riding round and round in the whirling current. On reaching the ocean floor, he was amazed to find a beautiful palace, and he went inside to explore. He made his way to a vast central hall, where he found the god Shiva sitting with his eyes closed, engaged in a meditative state. Just behind the god, and just above his head that was covered in a tangle of hair, was a platform where a beautiful young woman reclined and relaxed. Seeing her and being enthralled by her beauty, the prince went to the platform where she lay so peacefully. There he saw she had long, flowing red hair, waving like the ebb and flow of the sea itself, and that her hair was so long it flowed on until it reached the tangled hair of the head of Shiva. From there, their hair entwined and joined. The flowing locks swayed and danced in the ocean, which turned into the red rubies that were whirling around the maelstrom of water. This, the prince realized, was how the rubies were formed, from some kind of holy magic. The prince watched this scene for a while and saw the flow of rubies continuing, and so many of the jewels gathering in the water. As he watched on and followed with his eyes the incredible flow of red rubies, the reclining woman noticed him there, and she slowly got to her feet. This released her hair from where it was clasped with Shiva's. She looked at him in astonishment, as if she had never seen another human being before. And then she asked the prince how he had managed to find his way to the palace. She told him no other beings ever came down this far in the ocean. The prince told the beautiful woman everything that had happened so far, and how he had found the rubies and followed the place they flowed from. After hearing his story, she shook her head and said, "Foolish young man, get you gone from this place now with all speed, for when Shiva awakens, the very glance from his eye will turn you to stone. Go now, before his slumber is over and his dreams disperse." But the prince had already fallen head over heels in love with the beautiful young woman, and would not leave without her. The woman was hesitant, and she paused for a while. She had never left Shiva or the bottom of the ocean before, and she knew nothing of any other way of life. She had never even met another person before. But now she had encountered this young prince and heard his story. She was intrigued about what kind of life might wait for her above the sea. At last, after much begging and pleading, she agreed to run away with him, and he led her back the way he had come, through the whirlpool to the boat. Together they collected a great chest of rubies, as many as they could gather, and they departed. Marriage. When they arrived safely back at the port the prince had left earlier, he found his mother anxiously waiting, and we can only imagine her wonderment at seeing the young woman who accompanied him. Together, they went back to the home of the prince, and they settled there for the evening. The prince and the woman were very tired from their journey, all the way up from the ocean floor, and they soon found their eyelids were drooping heavily, and their bodies needed rest. That night, they slept so soundly and safely, happy with their progress so far, and delighted with how many rubies they had managed to gather and bring with them. The prince dreamt of the shining red jewels, and the woman dreamt of the new land she had arrived in, a sky as wide and as blue as the sea, and a city that sparkled brighter than any jewel she had ever seen. Bright and early the next morning, the prince took a basket of the rubies to the king, who was astonished at seeing so many big, beautiful gems. His daughter was delighted that now she had more gems to match the one she already had, and she demanded of her father that she marry the strange and marvellous bringer of rubies. She was used to getting what she wanted, but this time it was not so easy. The prince was in love with the beautiful woman he had brought with him from the palace on the ocean floor, and he would not consent to marry the king's daughter. Just like the way seaweed tangles around rocks, and how the waves in the ocean sometimes go this way and that, the situation was complicated, as the beautiful woman from the ocean had no intention of marrying the prince. She simply wanted to live happily up there on the land in the shining city. It was the prince's mother who smoothed over these rucks in the silk and found a gentle way over these uneasy waters. If no agreement could be found, she advised that they live on and be friends, as they were, all three of them, and that love would find its way. They were young, and this they did. And in fact, it was the prince's mother who married first out of all of them. She married the king. Accustomed as she was to being a queen, this made her very happy. And as the king needed help with his daughter, she was also able to uncover the kindness and gentleness in this once demanding girl. And so, they all lived happily in the City of Jewels. And now this story is brought to an end, in keeping with the traditional way of Bengali storytellers. Thus my story endeth. The Natia thorn withereth. Why, O Natia thorn, dost wither? Why does thy cow on me browse? Why, O cow, dost thou browse? Why does thy neat herd not tend me? Why, O neat herd, dost not tend the cow? Why does thy daughter-in-law not give me rice? Why, O daughter-in-law, dost not give rice? Why does my child cry? Why, O child, dost thou cry? Why does the ant bite me? Why, O ant, dost thou bite? Coot, coot, coot. And each night the jewels glinted just like the stars in the sky, and the people of our story settled down for a restful sleep.